Ah! Alright, here we go. Hello everyone, and welcome to, well, I suppose the end of year improv video. I normally do these improv videos around a certain character, but things kind of changed and I honestly found something else that I thought would be quite fun to do instead. So here we are. This concept that I'm working on comes from someone called Angels and Bread ASMR. And he had this assignment that he was doing that I thought was quite interesting. Basically, he said that for his university, he was to write 10 minutes every day. He was to time 10 minutes every single day and write as much as he could without editing anything, which means no going back and rewriting one word. Once a word is written, you can't change it, and once it's done, you can't go back and edit anything about it. And he wrote a bunch of stories over the few days that he had, and he read them out on his channel, and I thought to myself, that's a lot of fun. I could do that too. So I have gone off and written 5 stories for you over the last few days, and I thought it would be nice if I shared them all with you. And since I thought, hey, people like my voice just as people like his voice, and people like his writing as much as they like my writing, well, this could be a lot of fun. So, without any further ado, let's get started, shall we? Alright, so I have the first story pulled up now. We'll go ahead and just go straight into it, and then after that I will give you all some details on what I thought this story might become. I'll also give a working title for it. Here we go. Azera looked on. The castle, the city, everything she had once built, crumbling to the ash it came from once again. As the mighty orc's spear pierced through her stomach, Azera felt herself jerk back before she gradually forced herself to look again at the crumbling city. What are we? She muttered weakly. Yak was confused. In his rage, he expected only rage back from Azera. But this felt different. What are you talking about? He said, contempt brewing in his voice. We are warriors. We are enemies. He gestured with one arm around the barren landscape, being sure to make sure he had a firm grip on the spear with his other hand. And this, he said with a loud boom, is our fate. But why? Asked Azera. We didn't have to choose this. She started to sputter as blood began to bubble up from her throat. I thought we had settled our differences. I thought Andromeda had... Andromeda is dead, announced Yak, his voice angry and shaking. He is gone. We have no say anymore. And with that, Azera finally understood. So, back to the old ways. Is that what this was? What else am I supposed to do? You could have made a difference. You could have... Shut up and die. Yak, once again, pushed the spear further into Azera. The pain Azera felt was unlike anything she had felt. It wasn't the kind of pain that simply hurt you physically. No, this pain was something that let you know that this was it. No more fighting. Only death. Only death, she thought. She thought about it a while longer. At this point, her body was weakening. She fell to her knees, slumped over, as Yak finally removed his spear with a mighty pull. And that's as far as I got with this story. The name of this story is called Death of the Ash Mother. It was based on a sort of animated story idea I had a while ago about Andromeda. And this story was basically about how he was to become king of this galaxy. And I wanted to base a story about some of his friends that had no choice but to fight and kill each other. And his friends, of course, being Azera, who has the ability to control ash, kind of like Elsa in Frozen, but with ash. She can create life and build cities and skyscrapers, all that stuff. And Yak, or Sheliak, is an orc who has the same sort of Highlander properties that Azera does, but his power is different. It's a whole thing, but this is a concept that I have been dwelling on for a while now. I also really like the idea that I can make these stories that aren't technically ASMR, anime, that kind of thing. You know, it's all sort of up in the air. I can be as creative as I want without having to worry about, does this get the attention of the algorithm? Does this not get the attention of the algorithm? This is just fun for me. All right, so that's the first story. We'll move on to the next one now. The illusion began to break. What was a never-ending cacophony of noise and color eventually solidified as a mystical laboratory, complete with potions and spellbooks, the likes of which I'd never seen. This was probably because the man who had given me this job was far from a reputable businessman. But this wasn't why I was here. The man turned around in a show of flashy brilliance. "Welcome," he said with his arms outstretched, to... He took a moment's pause. I guess I never really came up with a name for this place. I guess it's technically my lab, but I could have thought of something funny at least. It's very different from the labs I know of, I said in slight bewilderment. I wasn't fully able to comprehend everything yet. The illusion we had walked through to get here was still lingering in my head, still giving me slight nausea. "So, you say you have a job for me, correct?" I desperately tried to focus myself. "Hey now," said the man. "No need to be so hasty. Here, have a drink. It'll help with the nausea." Gingerly, I took the glass the man had mysteriously appeared into existence. I say this because I was still unfocused and couldn't disdain the information of where and when he had prepared this beverage. "That reminds me," I remarked after taking one gulp of whatever it was inside the glass without putting any thought into it. "I never asked for your name." "My name?" said the man. "Oh, how rude of me. It must have slipped my mind." The man took a moment to think. "Call me Frank." "Frank?" I said in disbelief. "That can't be your name." "It's not," said Frank, "but it's what everyone calls me, so you shall too." Eventually resigning myself to the stupidity of the situation, I decided to focus back on the task at hand. "All right, Frank," I spoke with mild sarcasm. "Why are we here?" So this story idea comes from the concept that I had that Frank might be some sort of Indiana Jones-esque character. The story I was eventually going to tell was that we would eventually look into the ruined city that Mazel created to rule all of Manus from, and that Frank wants to find someone who has knowledge of things that shouldn't be known, and his job is essentially to capture this knowledge and sell it. A little less Indiana Jones, more Catwoman. That's a fun concept, actually, if anyone wants to draw Frank the skeleton as Catwoman. Maybe we can do that for another Halloween art contest. All right, and the name of this story is Heist of Hearth and Home. All right, let's move on to story number 3. Why haven't you killed me? Stelia was stunned for a moment. It wasn't that she didn't hear Ryan. It's just that she never expected him to say that. "Excuse me?" she asked inquisitively. "Apologies," said Ryan with a slight chuckle. "I simply ask why you haven't chosen to kill me. You could have done so many times by now." Stelia took a moment, but eventually found her words. "You said we needed to help the humans." "Yes, but how much is enough?" "What?" Stelia was stunned again. What was this? Some kind of turnaround of the century? She felt offended. The silence in the ordained conference room was deafening. A place that was normally filled with all kinds of political chatter was uncomfortably silent when it needed to be. But perhaps that could be chalked up to the tension in the room. Stelia once more found her words. That was supposed to be my question to you. My goal is and always will be to protect the humans. They are the reason I am alive, the reason Jeffrey kept fighting. I will never give up on them. And as I've seen in their own behavior, they refuse to give up on me too. If that's true, said Stelia eventually, why do you want me to kill you? I never said that, said Ryan firmly. I simply stated that, at any point, you could have taken my life, captured me, and took me back to the forces of the Ulyssians to be interrogated about the Eye of Viseroth. Perhaps you are aware of something. Aware of what? Asked Stelia, confused. Let me show you. Ryan felt his pockets until he found a key. He then used that key to carefully unlock his desk drawer. Inside the drawer was a digital document. Ryan showed Stelia the information it contained. This, said Stelia in shock as she looked over the document carefully. They're coming. I'm afraid so. I had thought that this was your doing, that you had told them about where I was, where we were. No, I would never. So this story, I have a working title called His Words Alone. And the idea is that these are the final words, or this is the final conversation that Ryan and Stelia would have, a serious conversation between just the two of them together in private, before Ryan's inevitable death and demise when the Landstar travels to the galaxy that we all know as Hoag's Object. So this is several hundred years before the events of Space Pirates, but not too long ago from Bastard Warrior, conveniently enough. Alright, so now for the fourth story. The icy winds pierced Hazel's lungs. The exhaust was unlike anything he had felt prior. Was this part of the Black Giant's power? No, this couldn't be. If that were so, he wouldn't be able to use his own power with each breath. Or maybe it was. Maybe it was his own mortality finally coming back to him. Regardless, this was no time to dwell on such matters. He was fighting for his life, and he would not simply let this armored monstrosity go around and attack the innocent creatures who had looked after him so tenderly. He stood up, at first by propping his weight against his sword, but eventually on his own 2 feet. He wouldn't let this be the end of him. He bore his weapon once more and charged at the giant. At that moment, he felt something change within him. A feeling, something he hadn't felt in how long? He wasn't sure. Feeling was unnatural to him, but it wasn't unwelcome. All he could think about was how important this world was to him. This world. This cold, frozen, and barren wasteland of a world. But to him it meant something. Something he couldn't explain. Maybe for the first time since he was a star captain, since he became one, the chance to feel had once more returned. Maybe it was his own emotion finally breaking through, just as his star captain jumpsuit was showing through the tattered suit he called his uniform. The suit was only worn when he first came to this world, but ever since fighting the giant, it became clear the suit would not survive much longer. The icy winds put on more pressure as Hazel charged faster and faster toward the giant. No more, Hazel thought, no more of this bloodshed. No more of this pain. I became a star captain because I ran away from pain. I won't let anyone feel like that. I won't allow it. With a mighty swing, Hazel aimed to behead the giant. But instead, he only managed to crack the armor. Even so, Hazel knew the crack was more than enough. He felt the sword he wielded cut into the armor of the giant, and he knew there was something off about it. The helmet shattered into 1,000 broken pieces. From underneath was a mane of flowing, marble-white hair. I'll give you some guesses on who that might be. Also, I want to apologize for any background noise. I think someone is out there mowing their lawn right now. I have very, very rude neighbors. They don't seem to want to leave me alone. Anyway, This story is called Legacy of Colstar. For those of you who might know, this is based on the other Hazel video that I made. And again, like I said, I'll give you a few guesses as to who this giant might be. I think it would be best, though, if I kept a few of the details about this story in the dark as of right now. I think you understand. All right, I have one more story for you, and then I'll say a little goodbye. Here we go. Staring at the portrait made Hecalite feel comfortable. Depressed, but comfortable. His sister was always a rock in preventing him from going too far, from falling into a hole of never-ending invincibility. In his sister's eyes, invincibility was a weakness in and of itself. You could never hold on to being perfect all the time. But since her death, what choice did Hecalite have? His people needed a ruler, someone indomitable. The portrait seemed to glow despite its lack of light source. The only thing that made Hecalite's day brighter was simply a memory of better days. A time when he and his sister, along with their adopted mother, the previous Empirica, were together and happy. The silence in the room was suddenly broken by the creaking of a large ornate door at the corner of the room. Surprisingly, this would throw Hecalite for a loop when he'd come to realize he wasn't angry for anyone disturbing his peace. This was simply because the person who had opened the door had shone even more brightly than the portrait itself. Star Commander, said Hecalite with a start. I do apologize, my lady. If I had known you were visiting my world, I would have made arrangements. Hecalite was flustered. Solara's beauty was not something he expected to affect him so greatly. It didn't seem to affect anyone else in the same way. Perhaps it was some kind of kinship between them, a moment of unity. They did appear the same in a lot of ways after all, Hecalite being purely darkness, Solara being purely light. I'm afraid it is I who should be apologizing, Empirica, said Solara. Hecalite found her voice relaxing. I wanted to talk to you, but I had no intention of intruding on your private life. My emotions tend to get the better of me sometimes. Mine too, thought Hecalite, but he would never say it. What brings you here, milady? Please, insisted Solara. There is no need for formalities. I merely wish to talk. About what? I wanted to know what you might think about what it is we are. So this story is called Human. I had a lot of other working titles, but I ultimately wanted this story to be about how humans are flawed, but ultimately they are good people. It's very different from the context of the story, which is about two aliens slowly falling in love with each other. But you get the idea. The idea is that, of the story that is that there would be a group of humans trapped on a desolate world, and that these two warring factions would be creating enough crossfire so that no one could get through to these humans. And so the other human imperial worlds decide to band together in order to rescue these people because they've done nothing wrong. So they join forces, and Solara, of course, appears, which means that, the Landstar is involved in this as well. I'll tell you this right now, this story happens after Space Pirate Saga, so, lore gremlins, do with that as you will. Alright, well, I hope you were able to get some sleep, and, well, as of posting this, it's most likely Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, so happy Christmas, everyone. Take care of yourselves. I love you all. Good night.